Have you ever had a special nickname that made you feel really important? Maybe it was a name only your best friends called you, or a special title you earned at school. Now, imagine if that name was so powerful that everyone in the whole world knew it. Imagine if that name helped you get the best seats at a show, helped you help charities, and told everyone that you were part of a very famous and ancient family that lived in giant stone castles. That is what it is like to have a royal title, like being a duke or a duchess. It is like having a golden key that opens almost any door in the world. But now, imagine if the leader of that family, the king himself, started thinking about taking those keys back. Imagine if he was sitting in his big office with his helpers, looking at a list of names, and wondering if those names should be changed or even erased forever. This is not just a pretend story. Right now in the big city of London, King Charles is thinking about doing exactly that. And far away, in a sunny place called California, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are watching the news very closely. They are likely feeling a bit nervous, wondering if their special names might disappear. This is a story about big changes, family secrets, and what happens when the old ways of doing things meet the new world. It is a story about how a simple name can mean everything, and how quickly things can change when the person in charge decides it is time for a fresh start. Lately, there has been some big news from the big house where the king lives, which is called Buckingham Palace. The king's helpers told everyone that King Charles is very, very worried. He is worried because some people are saying bad things about how some members of the royal family have acted. People are talking about this all over the place, and it is making the king think hard. He is getting ready to make a very big choice. This choice could change how the family uses their special names, which we call royal titles, for a long, long time. People who know a lot about the palace say that this news has moved like a giant wave all the way to where Prince Harry and Meghan live in California. It has made them feel a little bit scared and unsure about what will happen next. They are likely having many fast and serious talks with each other because they don't know what the future holds for their family. What used to seem like a problem that was far away from them is suddenly feeling very close and very real. If King Charles goes through with his plan and changes the rules, it could change everything about how people see them. It could change how special they are and what they can leave behind for their children one day. So, what is this big and scary choice the king is thinking about? And why is it making everyone in the family feel like they are in a panic? To understand that, we have to look at why these special names matter so much, and why the king thinks it is time to look at them again. For many months, things have been getting more and more tense inside the royal family. It was like a balloon getting bigger and bigger, and most people did not think it would get this close to popping. But now, several news reports say that King Charles has started looking at something that the family usually never touches. He is looking at the rules for royal titles and how safe those titles really are. This did not just happen for no reason. For a while now, people have been upset about Prince Andrew and some of the things he did. This has made everyone look at the royal family with a very bright light, and it makes the king feel a bit uncomfortable. Because of all this noise and talk from the public, the king and his family have to think about hard questions they used to ignore. People who watch the monarchy and even experts who know the rules are asking if the old ways of doing things still work today. They want to know if being a royal should be different now that everyone is watching them so closely. These questions have led to some very serious talks behind the big palace doors. At first, the talks were very quiet, and only a few people knew about them. They were being very careful because they didn't want to upset anyone. But as more people kept talking about Prince Andrew, the palace realized they had to move faster. Now the thing that seemed impossible before, changing the rules for royal names, is actually being worked on. This is why so many people are paying attention right now. For a very long time, the royal family has tried to keep the rules exactly the same. They have kept the system of dukes and duchesses and other special names very steady. They did this because changing the rules can be very tricky and can cause a lot of big problems with history and the government. The king and his family know that once you change one rule, people will start asking to change even more rules. That is why everyone is feeling so worried and uneasy right now. According to the people who are watching this closely, the fact that the king is even talking about this shows that he is thinking in a very new way. If the rules for royal titles can be looked at and changed, it means that things people thought would last forever might not be as permanent as they seemed. This is a very big deal, not just for one person in the family, but for everyone who is connected to the king. Once the king starts looking at the titles, another big truth comes out. If a title can be looked at, it can also be changed to something else, or it can be taken away completely. Just the idea of titles being taken away has caused a lot of people to start guessing and talking all over the world. Even thousands of miles away in California, Prince Harry and Meghan have built a whole new life after they stopped being working members of the royal family. They cannot ignore these big talks happening in London. Once the question of looking at titles is opened up, an even bigger possibility shows up. If names can be looked at, can they also be changed or even erased so they never exist again? And for Harry and Meghan in California, what would that mean for their lives? Let's look closer to find out. The special names that helped Harry and Meghan become famous all over the world are now facing a very uncertain future. As the talks inside the royal family continue to happen, the effects are felt far beyond the palace walls. The idea that royal titles could be changed does not just affect one person or one bad situation. It also makes people ask hard questions about the royals who have built their whole public lives around those names. Harry and Meghan are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and even though they live in California, they are still tied to the king and the palace because of the titles they still use. For a few years now, these titles have been very important for how people recognize them across the globe. Even after they decided to stop doing official royal work, they kept their names as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Those names always show up in the news, when they are introduced at big events, and when they do work for charities or big business projects. In many ways, those names are like a bridge that connects their old life as royals to their new, independent life in America. It helps people remember where they came from even though they are doing their own thing now. When they left their royal jobs, it was a huge story that everyone talked about. But even though they moved away, they never truly lost their link to the royal family. The titles stayed as part of who they are and helped them have power on the world stage. Whether they are doing interviews on TV, starting new media companies, or helping people through charity work, their connection to the king helps people listen to what they have to say. It changes how people see the work they do. However, the feeling around those titles might be changing now. The second people started talking about changing the rules for royal titles in the government, and in the palace, everything started to feel different. What used to seem like a solid and safe plan suddenly feels very shaky. The reason things are so uncertain is because of something called precedent. This is a big word that means when you do something once, it makes it easier to do it again. Usually, the royal family is very, very careful about changing any rules for titles or status. They know that once they change one rule, it might lead to many more changes, and those changes could have big effects on the whole royal family. For a long time, this fear of making mistakes helped keep everything the same. But the pressure from the Prince Andrew situation has made it hard for the king to stay quiet. As people ask the king to be more open and to make the monarchy more modern, the idea of looking at titles has become a real conversation. Before, the family would have avoided these talks entirely. If the king decides that titles must be looked at again because of scandals or because the public is worried, that choice means a lot. It shows that the rules for royal titles are not perfect and can be changed if they need to be. And once people accept that things can change, the amount of change can grow much bigger than anyone thought at the start. For Harry and Meghan, whose public face is tied to being the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, this brings a lot of uncertainty. They have never had to deal with this kind of worry before. The big global brand they built around being royal could now be in trouble. People are starting to ask serious questions as the king continues to think about how to change the monarchy's titles and jobs in the future. For Prince Harry and Meghan, whose fame is built on their royal names, a quiet but big shift is happening inside the royal family. As more people whisper about a royal reset, which means starting over, one big question stays in everyone's mind. What happens if the names that define their whole world suddenly change or go away? Keep watching to find out. There's a quiet plan to start over that is slowly taking shape. As everyone feels more and more unsure about royal titles, they are looking at King Charles to see what he will do. People say the king is very carefully looking at the future of the whole royal family. According to people who know about these talks, the ideas he is looking at could be the biggest change in the modern royal time. These talks are not just about fixing one problem or making the news look better for a day. Instead, they seem to be part of a much bigger plan to make the royal family stronger and more trusted for many years to come. People who watch the royal family closely have known for a long time that King Charles wants to make things more modern. Even before he became the king, he often talked about how important it is for the monarchy to change so it fits into the world today. Now that he is the boss, that dream might finally be coming true. Reports say he has started asking very basic questions about how the family works, who has official jobs, and how the public sees the whole institution. This is a big deal because it changes how everyone in the family lives their lives. At the heart of these talks is a very simple but very strong question. Who should be allowed to have a royal title? And what should those titles really mean to people? For a long time, the royal system let many members of the big family have titles even if they did not do any real work for the king. Over many years, this created a very large group of royals. Some of them had very fancy titles but did nothing to help the family with their daily chores and jobs. It was like having a very big team where only a few people actually played the game. While people used to think this was okay, new problems and more people watching have made experts ask if the system should change. This is where the talks get really important. People say King Charles might be trying to make a very clear line between working royals and people who are not representing the king. Working royals are the members of the family who do official jobs, go to big events, help charities, and travel to other countries for the government. They are the ones people see on TV doing the hard work to keep the monarchy going. Others in the big family might still have old names from history, but they do not have the same big responsibilities. If the palace moves forward with this plan, the difference between these two groups will be much easier to see than ever before. In real life, this could mean that some royal names stay just for show. They would have history behind them, but they would not have any real power. In other cases, some titles might be taken away if the person holding them is not doing an active job for the king anymore. That possibility alone has made everyone who watches the royals start guessing what will happen next. The idea that titles could change meaning, or even go away quietly over time, is a huge change from the old traditions that have been around for hundreds of years. Far away from London, in a place called Montecito in California, Prince Harry and Meghan are watching these changes very closely. If the king decides to make a hard line between those who work for him and those who live their own lives, the results of that choice could reach all the way across the ocean. Across the Atlantic Ocean in California, where Harry and Meghan built a life away from the palace, a deeper problem started to happen. Did a secret crisis push the royal family toward a new rule that separates duty from being independent? Let's look at the details. This crisis forced the monarchy into a place it has never been before. To really understand why these talks about titles are happening now, we have to look back at the trouble that put the royal family under a very bright public light. The stuff with Prince Andrew did more than just make the news. It pushed the palace into a corner. For a very long time, the British royals had a quiet but strong rule. Some traditions were just not supposed to be touched. Rules about titles and who becomes the next king were treated very carefully because changing them was dangerous. Even a tiny change could start a big argument in the government or cause fights inside the family. Because of this, the palace always chose to keep things stable rather than making big changes. This meant they almost never took away someone's royal status or their honors. It was seen as something that could break the whole foundation of the family. The royal family is built on hundreds of years of tradition, and changing that structure felt like opening a door that might be hard to close. But the trouble with Prince Andrew made it very hard to keep doing things the old way. People were watching more closely than ever, and they wanted to see the king take responsibility. People weren't just asking about one person anymore. They were looking at how the whole royal system works and how it handles power and trust from the people. As things got worse, the king was forced to make choices that used to seem impossible. Prince Andrew had his military titles and special honors taken away. His public jobs were cut down a lot. These changes showed that even old royal powers could be looked at again when the king's reputation was in danger. This was a big turn in how the family handled a crisis. Things that used to be impossible were now being talked about and even done. The palace was in a new place, answering questions that earlier kings and queens had always avoided. Most importantly, a precedent was set. Once the royal family showed that some honors could be taken away, the talk about being responsible grew much bigger. People started asking if the king might rethink other parts of the family too. This included the whole system of titles and who does work for the king and who doesn't. What used to be a secret talk was now something everyone was discussing in public. Fixing the problem with Prince Andrew did more than just help one situation. It changed the rules for what can happen in the future. For many people who watch the royals, this change explains why King Charles is now willing to look at new rules that old leaders would have ignored. The old rule about never changing things has already been broken. Once that line was crossed, The idea of more change didn't seem so crazy anymore. Far away in California, where the sun is always shining, people are whispering about these royal reforms. What happens when old rules are challenged? Could this be the start of a huge shift that no palace has ever seen before? Stay tuned to see what happens next. As the effects of the Prince Andrew trouble keep changing what people expect from the royals, another force has been growing quietly. The British monarchy has stayed around for a long time by being careful with tradition and trust. But now, it is feeling pressure from many sides at once. This pressure isn't just coming from one person. It is a big conversation about what the monarchy should look like in the world today. People in the government are talking about it. Experts who know the rules are looking at the royal system too. They want to know if a 21st century world still needs the old ways. Even regular people in the UK and in other countries are asking if the royal family should change to fit modern values. At the center of these talks is a question that used to be a secret. Should the royal family stay big and complicated, or should it become smaller and more focused? People who want change say a smaller monarchy would make people trust them more. In this plan, only a few royals would do official jobs for the king. They would be the ones going to big dinners, helping charities, and traveling to meet leaders. Their jobs would be very clear, and everyone would know what they are doing. The idea is that a smaller group would make the family look more modern and efficient. Instead of a huge network of royals with titles but no jobs, the institution would be built around the people who actually work. Interestingly, King Charles has liked this idea for a long time. Even before he was the king, he talked about having a slimmed-down monarchy. When he was the Prince of Wales, he said the future of the family might depend on keeping things small and easy to manage instead of letting it grow forever. Now that he has the crown, he can finally make that happen. But turning this idea into a real rule is not easy. Making the monarchy smaller means asking hard questions about who gets to stay in the inner circle and who has to leave. These are not just business choices. They involve real people, old traditions, and family ties that go back a very long time. Changing the rules could change the titles and jobs that family members have had for years. This makes everything very sensitive. When you start talking about making the family smaller, the changes might not just affect distant cousins. They can also affect people whose lives have already changed, like Harry and Meghan. Harry and Meghan's status is being watched very closely because they moved away but kept their titles. As the royal boundaries move, how far can these changes go? Even people who live far away might feel the weight of tradition hitting their new, independent lives. What secret pressures are hidden under this delicate balance? Let's find out the truth. Life in California is now meeting the heavy weight of royal identity. As the talks about changing the family get louder, everyone is looking at the couple whose lives are happening far from the palace. Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, made a huge choice to stop being working royals and move to California. Their new home in Montecito is a quiet place near the ocean where a lot of celebrities live. It was the start of a very different life for them. The move put a lot of space between them and the world of palace rules and old traditions. In California, they don't have to go to official royal events or follow the king's schedule. Instead, they have worked on making their own path by helping charities and making TV shows and talking about big world problems. But even though their life is very different now, they still have one big link to the king. Their royal titles, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, are still with them. Those names are still in the news and at every event they attend. They are a big part of how the world knows who they are. For a lot of people, this has always been a bit strange. On one hand, they left their royal jobs and chose a life outside the palace. On the other hand, they still use their royal names in almost everything they do. In TV interviews and when they speak at big meetings, they are often introduced as the Duke and Duchess. The attention they get for being part of the royal family helps people listen to their voices. But the talks happening in London right now could change that balance. If the king decides to clearly say who works for him and who doesn't, the meaning of those titles could change a lot. Names that used to mean you were serving the king might mean something else if you are just living your own life. For Harry and Meghan, this is a very personal problem. Their lives in California are far away, but the choices being made in London could still change how people see them. If the king draws a sharp line, everyone will have to ask a hard question. What happens when the system that gave you your name starts changing the rules? What happens when the royal world starts rewriting its own history? As titles and fame are on the line, could Harry and Meghan's lives in California be the biggest test for the old traditions? Stay with us to find out more. There is big change on the horizon. The palace is busy thinking and talking, and the wait is almost over. Inside Buckingham Palace, the king's helpers are giving him detailed plans on how the monarchy can change for the modern world. At the same time, questions that used to be too scary to ask are being talked about openly. The way titles work and who gets to be a working royal are all being looked at very closely. What used to be a tradition that no one could touch is now being changed into something new and modern. Even though the king hasn't said anything official yet, people say he is thinking about the long-term future of the monarchy. For a very long time, titles like Duke and Duchess have stayed the same and been recognized all over the world. They have been part of thousands of ceremonies and news stories. But for the first time ever, those names are not guaranteed to stay the same. The whole system of being royal might be built again in a new way. For Harry and Meghan in California, this uncertainty is a big deal for their work and their lives. Their titles have helped them get into big meetings and have power. They were like bridges that connected their new businesses back to the old palace. Now, with rumors of change, even just mentioning their royal status might be questioned. Every interview and every project they do might be seen differently if their titles change. The effects of any choice the king makes will be huge. It could change how the royal family looks for many decades, changing not just who does the work, but who people think represents the crown. For the whole family, especially those who don't have jobs for the king anymore, this is a time of big worry. The difference between a name that is just for show and a job with real responsibility is becoming more than just talk. It might soon be a real rule. People say this is a very hard job for the king. He has to respect the old traditions, but also listen to the public who wants things to be modern and clear. It is like trying to balance on a very thin wire. He has to save the history, but also live in the 21st century. This is a job that very few people have ever had to do. The stakes are very high, and every choice will be part of history. In California, reports say Harry and Meghan are watching everything very carefully. Even though they are far away, their link to the family is very deep. The results of the talks in London will directly change the identity they have built for themselves. For them, the question is not just a guess anymore. The changes could redefine their names and what those names mean to the whole world. The palace, which is usually very slow and careful, is now on the edge of a big change. Things that were thought to be unchangeable are now being looked at again. As the world waits to hear the news, you can feel the tension in the air. The royal family is entering a time where the choices made in one day could last for 50 or 100 years. It will change relationships, jobs, and what it even means to be a royal person. For Harry and Meghan, the question is not if change will come, but how much it will change their lives. So, what do you think? Could King Charles really change the rules for royal names? And how will it affect Harry and Meghan in the long run? We want to hear what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss any more news.